1 august 2022, penultima oprire. Am ajuns în Halifax, al doilea port din Canada pe care îl vizităm. Acum 2 zile am fost în St. John, un oraș urâțel, murdărel, care mie nu mi-a plăcut în mod special și nu cred că o să mai mă duc vreodată pe acolo. Și Halifaxul de pe geam arăta foarte bine. O să mergem să-l explorăm împreună. Un pic mai civilizație pe aici. Cum face Ronaldo? Ia să vedem.
Hai sus! Mateo!
Dă jos masca, Mateuț. Ia uitați, un trotuar de lemn. Trotuar de lemn. Ia uitați ce vechitură de autobuz. Anticbus.com. Mamă, frate, cât de veche. Deci, pe cât de vechi pare, atâta și de așa de vechi și miroase. Deci, zici că e de pe vremea lui Pazvante. Extraordinar, frate, ce autobuze. Pe bune, deci Canada ne dezamăgești crunt. Cam asta e harta la periplul nostru de astăzi. Și aici la numărul 9 e un loc foarte interesant, pentru că la numărul 9 se află cimitirul victimelor care au survenit în urma scufundării Titanicului, la numărul 9. Deci locul de veci al celor care au murit în urma scufundării Titanicului se află în Halifax, da?
Up until 1970. By 1970, of course, immigration, air travel took over and displaced the need for people coming by boat. As we round this corner, the building in the foreground, the large red brick building, it's presently a Westin hotel, but that was built in 1930 by the Canadian National Railway. Railways tended to build large hotels at the end of the line, and we were the end of the line for the mainland of Canada at the time, and that hotel was built. It fell into non-use in the 70s. There was talk of tearing it down. Thankfully, the Westin chain came along in the 90s and rebuilt it, so it's a very nice hotel. As we round the corner here, over to the right-hand side, you'll notice a prominent statue in that little roundabout at the end of the building. That's a statue to Samuel Cunard. That is the Samuel Cunard of Cunard Shipping fame. He was born here in Halifax. His family was one of a lot of families that came north after the American Revolution. We call them British Empire loyalists. If you chose to stay loyal to the British Crown and you didn't go back across the pond to England, you likely came to Halifax. So a lot of our originally founding families were displaced from New England. That's why there's a close connection between Boston and Halifax to this day. Now, as we travel along the waterfront, the harbor comes into glimpses between the buildings, but if you are here for the day, I would suggest you choose to take some time to walk the Halifax Waterfront. It's an easy walk, boardwalk, no hills, flat all the way, and it's a great way to see the city. Our first stop is down here by the Alexander Keith Brewery. They've been making beer in this building coming up on the left for over 200 years. It's one of the oldest active breweries in Canada. Wow. Alexander Keith was a Scottish settler, came here, and this happens to be the anniversary of emancipation in Canada. And 200 years ago, when emancipation came in, all of a sudden the sugar plantations had fewer workers, but slavery was outlawed, so rum was displaced by beer, and ale is a popular drink here in Halifax, and he was one of the first guys to set up a brewery and was very successful. So this first stop is Alexander Brewery. Also the Amos Pewter is here, and of course your first access to the Halifax Waterfront.
Nu oprim aici, că n-am ca să mai stau în autobuzul ăsta.
That will be the Maritime Museum. Maritime Museum of the Atlantic. That's where they house some Titanic artifacts, and plus the history of sail and steamship travel in this part of Canada. Museum of the Atlantic. Around the downtown streets of Halifax, we're in the old part of the city, you'll notice some of the buildings will have brass or bronze plaques. They're usually an oval shape with blue or green background, which designate the building as having some significant historical significance. For example, we're going to make a left turn here, and this building to my left, as we make this corner, as we round the corner, if you look at the building, the windows you'll see have high arches. If you go back 100 years ago, this was actually a fire station, so those weren't actually windows. They would have gone right to the ground. They would have been doors into the fire station.
Aici era stație de pompieri pe vremuri și geamurile astea de fapt erau porți.
To our left, the red brick building, the old triangle. That's the most popular pub, Irish pub in Halifax. Live entertainment there basically every day. Very popular on St. Patrick's Day.
Oh, ce frumos.
We're going to make a left-hand turn onto Hollis. I'll have you take note over to the right. That's our province house. We'll see it later on the tour as we come back down to the downtown. That's our provincial government. But I'll give you the background on that later. To the right is the Halifax Club, established in 1862. That's one of those businessmen's club, you know, where people meet after a day's work and over drinks maybe make their real business deals. Interesting fact, they didn't allow female members until the 1970s, but the present president of the club is a lady. So we're traveling along Hollis Street. Now, I pointed out the province house when we came around that corner because we get to the far end down here, another 3 blocks, we're going to be at Government House, which is the home of the Lieutenant Governor. So prior to Canada becoming Canada in 1867, we were a British colony. So the governor lived in Government House. The business of the day was conducted back behind us, and he used to walk this street. His wife didn't like the fact that this was also the street for the ladies at the evening sign that this would have been the front entrance. But because of the trafficking in Canada on the way back from work, she had to move the entrance to the other side. So this is Government House to the right. It's still the home of the Lieutenant Governor, which means that's the Queen's representative in the province of Nova Scotia. So any royalty that visit Canada, that's where they would stay if they come to Halifax. So, for example, the present Queen has stayed there on several occasions. Charles and Diana have stayed there. And if you go back, any of the first king to stay there was King George. The present Queen's father stayed there back in the 40s. So, as I stated, it's still a home for the Lieutenant Governor.
Okay. Patrimoniales, case patrimoniale.
We're going to make a right-hand turn onto Barrington Street. Now, basically Barrington Street would function as the main street of Halifax. So, during both World Wars, any Canadian soldiers going overseas, like 99% of them would have left for overseas from the port of Halifax, and they likely would have marched down this street before their departure, and if they were fortunate enough to make it back safely, they would have marched back down this street when they return from overseas. So we're going to see Government House again, which today is the front door, but as I stated earlier, it was originally designed, this would have been the back. It's coming up here on the right-hand side. On the opposite side of the street is the old burial grounds. That's the oldest cemetery in Halifax. I'm going to talk about a prominent individual there in a moment. But as we turn this corner, if you look to your left, it'll soon be on your right, is St. Mary's Basilica. That's the seat of the Archdiocese, Catholic Archdiocese of Halifax. Now that building was built in 1899, or opened in 1899. It has the tallest granite spire in North America at 195 feet. The church is open, or the cathedral, every day, so you can also tour that. It's quite a building. And this is the start of Spring Garden Road, which is the most popular shopping district east of Montreal. On the right-hand side, you'll see a prominent statue in front of the old public library. Most people will recognize the figure it represents, Winston Churchill. Churchill visited Halifax twice during World War II on his way to meet with Roosevelt. So that's the old public library. The new public library is coming up on the left-hand side. It's the glass structure. And it opened 10 years ago to a lot of critical acclaim. If you're able to get a vista, people on the upper level of the bus can easily see it. It's made to resemble several books stacked on top of each other. Kind of a very interesting building. So this whole next number 3 or 4 blocks until we reach the public gardens, this is a very popular shopping district. Great spot to drop. So if you're going to stop here at some point during the day for lunch or an afternoon drink, this would be the area you'd want to come to. So back to the burial grounds that we passed. A lot of early prominent citizens buried there. The one I like to tell the story about is Robert Ross, General Robert Ross. He was in charge of the British forces during the War of 1812. So he's the gentleman that led the siege on Washington. So he's the gentleman that arranged for them to burn the White House and the Capitol building and chased President Madison out of town. Now, he was an interesting gentleman because he'd worked in there, fought in the Napoleonic Wars, especially on the Iberian Peninsula in Spain, and he didn't like what would happen after a siege, what the pillage and the assaults that would take place. So he purposely made sure his men did nothing other than destroy some of the public buildings, hence the White House and the Capitol building. So it was noted at the time that he did not destroy any private property. Now that was also the war that they used a certain type of explosive from their cannons at the siege going to Baltimore, which caused the Star Spangled Banner to be written Rothman's red glare. That's where that line comes from that battle. Now he was killed in the battle at Baltimore. He had requested that he be brought back to Halifax, which they were able to do. They put his body in a keg of rum, or a barrel of rum, I should say, brought it back to Halifax, so he's buried at the burial grounds. So the next time you have a full-bodied rum, pour yourself a stiff one, think of Robert Ross. Now this is the Halifax Public Gardens, a very popular spot. One of only 2 Victoria Gardens in North America. It's a 16-acre site surrounded by a wrought iron fence. If you choose to get off here, there are public restrooms here and a small snack bar in the pavilion. It's spacious for walking, but remembering that this gardens opened in the 1870s, they needed it to be wide enough for ladies in hoop skirts to pass each other on the pathways. After we round this corner, if you keep looking in towards the gardens, you'll notice the band shell. That band shell is 150 years old, and for a wooden structure to be retained in the shape it's in, it's quite amazing. It was built for the Golden Jubilee of Queen Victoria. As we go further along this street, on the left-hand side is another old cemetery, Camp Hill Cemetery. Alexander Keith, the brewmaster I talked about earlier, he's buried there. Every year on his birthday, you can find a bottle or a can of his beer on his headstone. The other prominent Haligonian, she's sometimes referred to as Canada's Rosa Parks, but she was 10 years earlier than Rosa Parks. You know, her challenge took place in the 1940s, and it was to do with her being refused admittance to the upper part of a theater in a town here in Nova Scotia. She fought the case and won. So she's presently on our $10 bill. As we round this, we have a semi-pro soccer team that plays there. But that's been a sporting field for over 150 years. They've played cricket there, lawn bowling, baseball. Babe Ruth did a demonstration there in the 1940s. Now the park, once again, is on our right. As we come down to this next intersection, you'll take note of a building on the left-hand side. It's a prominent-looking residence. It'll be mentioned, you'll see a sign that says the Power Building. Power was the name of the original gardener that designed the park. He trained with the people that did Central Park in New York. So he got to live in that building. It was built for him. It's interesting because if you go back to that era, he got to live there. The Lieutenant Governor got to live in the mansion I showed you earlier. The mayor nor the premier of the province don't get a house. So the head gardener and the representative of the Queen got their own houses. Now we're going to be turning left up onto Citadel Hill. I mentioned earlier this is the reason for Halifax's founding. Now the fortifications don't look like anything from this angle because they made use of the landmass. If you look at aerial photographs, you'll understand what I mean. But there was never a shot fired from the Citadel or at the Citadel. So it served its purpose as a deterrent, which is what the New Englanders at the time wanted. They didn't want the French coming south and... So the city was founded in 1749, but of course they kept changing the fortification over the years. So the present structure basically attained this shape, if you will, in the 1830s. Interesting historic fact, the British colonel who's responsible for the design, his name was James Arnold. Anybody want to guess what his father's name was? Benedict Arnold, that's correct. So the son of Benedict Arnold designed the present fortification site, or as it's displayed now. This is one of the most visited historic sites in Canada. Now we're going to stop here for a matter of 10 minutes or so. So if you want to disembark and take a quick photograph, or if you decide to do a tour of the Citadel, obviously you can do that and get back on a hop-on bus that comes by later. The buses, I don't see any issue with traffic today, so they should be running about 20 minutes apart. But you'll have time if you choose to jump off here and take a photograph while we're up here at the top of the hill. The town clock is coming into view on the right-hand side of the bus. That was years until he got called back to England because he and his brothers, somebody had to come up with a legitimate heir for the British throne. King George had 4 sons. None of them had a legitimate heir. So he went back to England, left his mistress, French mistress here, found an appropriate bride in England, and he became Queen Victoria's father. But he died within a couple of months of Queen Victoria's birth. So we'll be pulling over to the left. If you choose to disembark, I'm going to take some photographs before we take off again, or you can choose to visit the Citadel and get a later bus.
Spunea mai devreme ghidul că soldații canadieni, 99% dintre ei plecau din Halifax. Bineînțeles că plecau la bordul navelor și ia priviți cum se forma un convoi în golful din Halifax și soldații alături de echipament, muniții și de provizii se duceau spre Europa. Iar când soldații canadieni erau repatriați acasă, ajungeau tot aici. Sorry. Da, e un oraș foarte frumos. Din ce am văzut până acum, se îmbină foarte frumos partea istorică cu partea nouă, clădiri moderne. Aici cred că e patinoarul lor. Foarte îngrijit. Chiar foarte frumos Halifax. Vremea e bună, e cald. Și aici în fortăreață sper să apucăm și noi să intrăm. Eu chiar îmi doresc chestia asta.
Pe cine face poză?
Bravo, Mateuț! Ne pregătim să auzim o salvă de artilerie. Așa, în câteva secunde o să facă kabum. Ai mâncați-aș! Că mi-a stat inima. Mamă, deci a trecut suflu și prin piept, l-am simțit. Extraordinar. V-a plăcut, mă?
Thank you.
Vă mai place la război? Mai vreți la război? Nu mai vreți? Mama lui Dumnezeu. Deci mi-a stat herțul. Uitați ce fumălău.
So here comes the early century. The Gricola guy is now going to get him to fix his bayonet. He is on duty. He needs all the possible weapons he has at his disposal. So he has his rifle, he has his nice trusty bayonet. Sentries were so important that they would be the only soldiers issued with live ammunition every single day. So you'd be on the guard detachment about once every 2 weeks or so. And when you were on the guard detachment, you'd be given 10 rounds in your expense pouch here and 1 loaded into your rifle. So if somebody's coming up the hill to attack the fort, you have at least a couple of rounds to get off to at least slow them down until the rest of the guard detachment has come to your aid. So the corporal of the guard is going to relay the relief sentry's orders.
Halt! Sentries. A whole lot of spinning around. This is to ensure that there's always at least one person staring at the gate, making sure nobody can sneak by them while they're doing the change. So in case you didn't hear the orders that the corporal said, the first one is to take charge of all government property within range of this post. That's a whole lot of military jargon that basically means, as a sentry, you're responsible for not only the security of the fort, but all government property you can see from your post. So, town clock, city hall, province house, the lieutenant governor's residence, anything that this sentry can see, it is his job to make sure it's not being attacked, it's not being looted, and it's not on fire. The second one is to allow all persons of respectable appearance to be admitted without a pass by recording their name in the visitor's book. So I don't know if all of you will be getting past the sentry today, but assuming that anybody who looks respectable enough comes up to the gate, the sentry will allow them to pass through, provided that they would sign their name in the visitor's book. So 1870, as long as you look respectable enough, you'd be permitted into the fort. Provided you sign your name in the visitor's book, you'd be searched for
any sort of pencils or paper, anything you can do to make drawings or sketches. And then one of the off-duty sentries would take you on a tour of the fort. The last one is to pay compliments to all officers of the Army and Navy. So, essentially, we extend that to the Air Force nowadays. There was no Air Force in 1870. Then an officer would come by, the sentry would shoulder arms just like this, and with present arms just like that, the officer would salute back, and then the sentry would go back to the shoulder, and then back down to the order. Now the corporal of the guard has gone into the guard room. The tunnel is now clear. There will be an English and French guided tour, starting at the building. You can see just through there in about 5 minutes. And if you have any questions, find anybody in a military-looking uniform. They'll probably be able to help you out. If you want to take any photos of the sentry, you're more than welcome. Just don't touch the sentry. Si vous voulez un visite guidée, you'll commencer just là en 5 minutes. Have a good day, folks, and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you.
Așa că am intrat în interiorul fortăreței. Primul rând de fortificații. Ia uitați ce frumos. Asta e un fel de poartă care se ridică. Dacă atacatorii reușesc să treacă de prima linie, atunci se ridică această poartă și aici normal trebuia să fie crocodili și balauri și dinozauri și apă în general. Ia uitați ce frumos e, wow, ce frumos e, o fortăreață intactă. Se pare că această fortăreață a fost construită cu scopul de a impresiona mai mult decât de a apăra orașul Halifax, pentru că aici nu s-a tras niciun foc de armă niciodată, dar era așa de bine construită și așa de masivă încât francezii niciodată n-au îndrăznit să atace această fortăreață, spre deosebire de fortăreața de la Louisbourg din Cape Breton. Curtea interioară. E frumos că e prezervată perfect. Și aici avem diferite clădiri unde stăteau, unde erau garnizoanele, unde erau depozite de muniții, magaziile, probabil că și grajdiuri. Da, se trag salve de artilerie. Am ratat, din păcate am ratat salvele de artilerie. Ia uitați ce tunuri! Ce tunuri! Asta e 24, ăla din St. John era 30. Ia uitați cum arăta la 1870. Cum stăteau băieții cu tunurile gata să tragă în navele inamice din port. Și asta e poză de la 1860. Ia uite macheta. Macheta Citadelei. Să ne putem să intrăm pe aici? Uite, gun rooms. Gun rooms. Ia uitați, bă, fraților, ce am găsit. Ia uite ce frumos, gun rooms. Ia uite, aici soldații aveau și o sobă. Și aici dormeau. Aici dormeau soldații. Vezi? Aici dormeau soldații pe pătuțurile astea și aici era soba. Și aici tu, bum, bum, bum.
E imposibil să duc pe metalul ăsta, că-i doare cap.
Păi aveau saltea, tata.
Dar și vreau cu tu, înțeles?
Mă gândesc că aveau saltea. Dar ia uitați ce crăpătură. Ia uitați ce crăpătură aici. Da, și astea, chestiile astea sunt măsurători de crăpături. Știu că și pe stadionul olimpic de Montreal, pe turn, au instrumente dintre acestea care măsoară cât de tare se distanțează crăpătura. Deci ăsta e predecesorul la mortiere. Asta e un howitzer. Ăsta trăgea la distanță scurtă, dar acolo unde cădea ghiuleaua, dacă erau 1000 de oameni, mureau toți 1000. Că se împrăștia ghiuleaua, știi? Deci cu ăsta nu trăgeai în fortificații. Cu ăsta trăgeai în soldați, în armate, în cai, în cavalerie. Și la impact, ghiuleaua de la howitzer făcea distrugere totală pe o rază foarte mare.
Dar ce înseamnă ghiuleaua?
Ghiulea.
Ce înseamnă ghiulea?
Adică cum ar veni glonțul. Ghiulea. Cannonball.
Lemnul de
Și aici pe catargul ăsta, practic, cei din fort comunicau cu cei de pe vas folosind steaguri. Dacă ridicau un steag de anumită culoare, înseamnă că era ok. Dacă era de altă culoare, era altceva. Și era același principiu ca la corăbile și la vapoarele de luptă ale acelei vremi, pentru că, bineînțeles, că nu exista comunicare radio, așa că comunicau prin semnale luminoase sau prin steaguri. Bagă înăuntru ghiuleaua și în spate la ghiulea e praful de pușcă. Și au fitil, uite aici, hai să-ți arate, tata. Aici undeva trebuie să fie o gaură. Aici nu se vede, sau poate chiar aici, vezi? Aici puneau niște făclii, înțelegi? Și dădeau foc. Și când dădeau foc, se ducea focul înăuntru și exploda praful de pușcă și ghiuleaua pleca. Pleca și dărâma tot în calea ei. Cehia, Bohemia?
Nu, Bohemia.
Bohemia.
Nu, Bohemia. Cu A, Bohemia. Așa zic.
Bun. Astăzi este aniversarea orașului Halifax. Nu mai țin minte câți ani au zis că are. Se pare că în fiecare vară aici au festivalul Busker. tot felul de scamatorii, muzică. Multă lume, vreme bună. Copiii s-au obosit. Că obosit, Mateo? Da. Da. Ați văzut? Asta e un Kurocsi Kolaci în miniatură.
În Halifax.
În Halifax. Și
Serviți?
și bineînțeles că l-am întrebat pe domnul proprietar dacă e ungur și a zis că e jumate ungur, jumate român. Salutare!
E bun?
E foarte bun, dar e mic! Da, mă, deci am întâlnit români și în Halifax, da? Incredibil. Și aici porumb fiert. Băi, e multă lume. E multă lume și foarte frumos aici. Da, chiar sunt plăcut surprins. Omul a zis că e din București. Mă așteptam să zică că e și din Brașov. Și stai să vă mai zic o fază, că am uitat să vă zic. Fotograful de pe vapor, care ne-a făcut pozele de familie, îl cheamă Spencer. Vine din Leeds, Anglia. Și nevasta lui e dobrogeancă. Dar ghiciți unde locuiesc? Locuiesc în orașul Brașov, în cartierul Coresi, în nou cartier. De asemenea, la bijuterie, acolo de unde mi-au luat ceas, o fată spaniolă, Tamara, căsătorită cu un român, Cristian, care vine tot de unde? Tot din Brașov. Și locuiește tot în Coresi, pe partea cealaltă a drumului de fotograf. Incredibil. Da. Hai să luăm înghețată.
Hai facem turul în vapor.
Uite, vezi, are cheiuri ca la noi acasă, vezi? Easy Dock, vezi?
Ok. Vrei să mergi să luăm înghețată, te rog? Nu poți să ți uite multă lume și pe tine.
E bun? M-am dezobișnuit să văd așa de mulți copii, pentru că pe vas numai oameni mai în vârstă. Bă, și e lume aici ca la Balamuc. Și acum mergem la Beer Garden să bem un Alexander Keats, o bere faimoasă de aici din Halifax și nu numai, e o bere originală canadiană. Alexander Keats ăsta a fost și primar în Halifax de 3 ori. Și în cinstea lui o să beau eu o bere. Oi, ce frumos e! Ce frumusețe! Ce scrie aici, mă? Acest monument e un simbol universal. Proud, strong and global united Lebanese community, mă. Ia uite, mă. Pentru libanezi. Ce treabă au libanezii cu Halifaxul? Acum trebuie să... e line-up să intri. Oh my god. Oh my god, e line-up să intri. Da, trebuie să fie foarte bună berea asta, dacă e line-up.
Deci e un line-up ca să intri.
Incredibil.
Ia, Olivia.
Line-up la berărie.
Așa e peste tot, da?
Ne-am oprit la Beer Garden și peste câteva zeci de minute începe meciul de fotbal dintre Halifax Wanderers și York. Guanga? Nu, mami?
Cine e Guanga? E cald, ne venim de la -3 de Iceland și am ajuns în Canada unde e super cald.
Cam așa arată mâncarea în Halifax. La Beer Garden, bineînțeles. Chips? Mănâncă, mănâncă. Am terminat la Beer Garden, intrăm la Public Garden. O să traversăm puțin acest parc renumit din Halifax. Este un parc celebru de altfel, foarte frumos, grădină englezească. Și dacă traversăm în diagonală parcul, o să ajungem la terenul de fotbal, unde se desfășoară meciul de fotbal din divizia canadiană dintre Halifax Wanderers și cu York. Hai, Mateuț! Dar e un parc splendid. Și spunea ghidul din autobuz că aceste alei le-au făcut suficient de largi ca să poată două doamne îmbrăcate cu rochie din aia de epocă să încapă una pe lângă alta. Lăsați rațele, vă rog! Un alt fapt foarte important din Halifax, se pare că grădinarul șef al acestui parc avea privilegiul să aibă o casă a lui. E undeva la marginea parcului, am și văzut-o din autobuz. Se pare că doar guvernatorul general și grădinarul aveau casă plătită de coroană. Ca să vă dați seama ce funcție importantă avea grădinarul. De asemenea, se spune despre Halifax, spunea ghidul că este orașul copacilor. Ia uite, s-a strâns lumea la concert. Ce frumos! Nu te prosti, tati, hai! Foarte frumos acest loc. Și temperatura e ideală, 22 de grade. Se pare în schimb că e o zi neobișnuit de caldă pentru Halifax. De obicei e mai multă răcoare. Ce zice aici? Oh! Uite, zice RMS Titanic Pond Model. Așa. Deci aici trebuie să avem o machetă după Titanic. Dar unde e macheta?
Știi, puteți să mergem la meci?
Cred că trebuie să vedem macheta. Auzi stadionul, Mateuț? Auzi gălăgia de pe stadion?
Auzi,
hai că merge. Așa că anul ăsta ne-am plimbat în câteva parcuri faimoase. Mont Royalul din Montreal, după aia Central Park din New York, după aia parcul acela din Mexic, din Valladolid, parcă, sau, da, Valladolid, din Mexic, și acum Public Garden din Halifax. Uite, stadionul e acolo, trebuie doar să găsim o ieșire, cum ieșim din parc, că doar nu o sări gardul. E o galeria. Am găsit și ciuperci. Ia uite, și tribunele sunt pline, mă. Tribunele sunt pline, dacă vă vine să credeți, la un meci de divizia a doua. Ia să vedem cum ne luăm bilete. Deci eu o întreb pe doamna aia dacă pot să cumpăr bilete aici și aici da, dar trebuie să mergem în partea altă. Păi zi, bă, femeie, aici. Aici la ea reprezintă o rază de 500 de metri, cred că. Tu ai înțeles ceva din ce a zis doamna aia?
Yes, you can buy.
Putem cumpăra tichete aici, da, dar trebuie să mai mergi o jumătate de kilometru încolo.
E ok, nicio problemă, nu-ți fă grește, mai... E ok. Asta nu mai poate, moare. Let's go, bebe.
Bă, dar, Mateo, cu cine ținem? Cu Halifax sau cu York?
Dar jucăm la ce? Acasă la cine?
La Halifax.
Acasă la Halifax.
Nu ești în Halifax.
Deci
jucăm cu Halifax.
N-ai găsit o creangă, umbli cu frunza, a? Umblăm frunza.
Da, umblăm frunza.
Copilul ăsta e singur cu Manchester pe aici, ai văzut?
Nu, că am mai văzut.
Mai văzut?
Da.
Manchester, am văzut cu Arsenal. Dincolo.
Ce frumos. Pe mine chiar mă bucură chestia asta.
Da, și oricum, vedeți și alt meci. Vedeți și Portugalia cu Ghana.
Uite, bă, și cai, bă. Ia uite, bă, frate, cai.
Oricum, vedeți și Portugalia cu Ghana și o să vedem și Croația.
Ia uite, mă, căluți, mă. Ok, hai să cumpărăm bilete la primul meci din divizia B din Canada. Fraților, am ajuns la meci pentru prima oară în direct, meci de divizia a doua. Deci noi ținem cu ăștia în gri. Ăștia sunt Halifax. Scorul este 2-0 pentru York. Da, uite că e scrie acolo pe tabelă, vezi? Na, le-am cerut cele mai bune bilete care le mai aveau disponibile, $180. Deci ăștia că sunt semi-professionals. Oh, frumos, frumos. Foarte frumos. Oh, foarte frumos. Mommy, welcome to the game. Olivia. Cine ar fi crezut că noi plecăm la Polul Nord și ajungem la meciul la... Da, tati, vedem. Ajungem la ăștia la meci. Tocmai am scris învins Halifax 3-1. Ia uitați, avem și gruparea Ultras. Gruparea Ultras.
In the 66 minute by number 31, Eric
Ia uite ce mișto, vezi? Fumigene.
Vreau să fiu și acolo, la galeria. Vreau să stau și acolo.
Bravo, Halifax! Bravo! Fault în careu și penalti. Penalti pentru Halifax în minutul 86. Scorul este 1-4 pentru oaspeți. Doi la 4. Mai sunt 3 minute jumate plus prelungiri. Haide Halifax! Haide Halifax! S-a încheiat meciul, mami. Am pierdut surprinzător cu 2-4.
A fost ok. Da, eu sunt mult mai...
Da. Și-au dorit victoria mai mult. Au luptat mai mult. Sunt mai fotbaliști. Mateu, ți-a plăcut?
Dar vreau să mă cumpăr tricou cu Halifax.
Cum bă să porți tricou cu Halifax?
De ce?
Cam așa arată tribunele stadionului. Tribune temporare. Dar oricum, hai să vedem terenul, Mateo. Important e că lumea iese din casă și suportă echipă. Uite, avem și un fotbalist aici. Asta e un fel de Cristiano Ronaldo. Și ăsta e gazon semisintetic. Vezi, gazon semisintetic. Jumate iarbă, jumate plastic. Îl vezi după pete. I-aș cere un autograf, dar nici nu știu cine e, că mi-ar fi dat un autograf. Să-ți dea autograf?
Da.
Du-te să-ți dea. Du-te cu tupeu, tati, hai! All right, good job, man. Așa că am întâlnit starurile locale, avem poze cu ei, o zi reușită.
And I bring that up because it's a leader in environmental technology, whereby they collect the rainwater through the sods on the roof, and they use that rainwater for flushing of the toilets in the high school. So right up ahead here, we're going to be seeing the Halifax Commons. The Halifax Commons was given to the city by King George II for the people of Halifax, never to be developed other than recreation. We have a number of things. We have the Wanderers Grounds, of course, which is part of that. Tennis courts, 7-ball diamonds, and we have a skateboard park, which is very interesting. It's right outside the emergency room of our Huey Hospital. I don't know if that was by coincidence or by design. So as we make our way here, you'll see our beautiful commons, and where those flags are, that's the Halifax Oval that was built for the Canada Games in 2011. And the people of Halifax so much enjoyed that skating oval that we were able to keep it. So now we have can hold up to 1,500 skaters, and right now there's rollerbladers on it. And in the winter, skaters, whereby it's free of charge, and if you want rollerblades or skates, you just sign them out. You don't even need to own a pair. So nice in a day that you get nothing for nothing. You actually get something very nice there for nothing. The Commons was also home of Sir Paul McCartney played there, the Rolling Stones played there, and in 1984 we had the Pope visit Halifax. So here we are starting at Gricola Street. This was actually the most populated street, busy street in Halifax up until the Halifax Explosion, which changed everything. It became very, it took many, many years for it to come back. A lot of poverty was here. These homes here go for around $500,000 here on your left-hand side. So
wow, o căsuță aici e o jumătate de milion.
For sure. Number of restaurants are here and bars, the Chain Yard and the Compass Distillery. So lots, our next stop will be just up ahead, and that's stop number 7. Stop number 7, which is known as the North End Business District. So I'll So just to give you a little bit of history on the Halifax Explosion, it was December 6, 1917, and Halifax was quite the hub of the Dominion of Canada. World War I had brought activity and prosperity to the port. And the harbour was crowded with wartime shipping, convoys of ships loaded with war supplies of food, munitions, and troops gathered here. So I'll speak a little bit about this, that after this stop, stop number 7, North End Business District, for those who wish. I guess I have this all day too, yay. Anyway, we're going to make our way to stop number 8, which is the Hydrostone Market. So just in the meantime, I want to give you a little bit of background on the Halifax Explosion. It was around 7:30 a.m. on December 6th. The French ship Umblam, she left her anchorage outside the mouth of the harbour to join a convoy gathering in Bedford Basin. And she was loaded with 2,300 tons of wet and dry picric acid, 200 tons of TNT, 10 tons of gun cotton, and 35 tons of benzoyl. So a very lethal mixture, to say the very least. So at the same time, the Norwegian vessel, the Emo, was set off from the basin bound for New York to pick up a cargo of relief supplies for Belgium. So at the entrance to the Narrows, and that's where those red and white stacks are, after a series of ill maneuvers, the Emo struck the bow of the Mont Blanc. Now this wasn't, it was not a huge collision, it was just a scrape really, but it was enough to cause a spark that set off the explosion. The fire first, of course. So the captain, the pilot, and the crew immediately jumped ship into the lifeboats because they knew exactly what was ahead of them. They knew what was on there. Nobody else, of course, did. So the ship burned for 20 minutes, 13 until it rested against Pier 6, which I'll show you on our way back. It's the Richmond district. It was totally decimated. But this was the industrial north end of Halifax, and this street, of course, is, which I said earlier, was very, very busy. So the spectacle, of course, was thrilling and drew crowds of people, kids on their way to school, people on their way to work, kids that were in school looking out the windows watching this fire burn, unbeknownst what was just about to happen. So at 9:04 a.m., the explosion, the Mont Blanc exploded, and it left 1,600 people dead, 60,000 people injured, and a number of blindness. The Canadian National Institute of the Blind was created as a result of that, because it is said that there wasn't a pane of glass left in the city after that explosion. It's the second man-made, the second most powerful man-made explosion other than the atomic bomb. So since the population of Halifax was not huge at the time, so to have 1,600 people killed instantly, and homes and churches, schools destroyed in this area. So we're just coming up to the next stop, which is stop number 8, which is a Hydrostone Market, and you'll see up ahead the Hydrostone buildings were built as a result of the Halifax explosion. They're fireproof. You can see them up ahead on your left-hand side, and there's a number of stores, the Hydrostone Market, and behind there are another number of buildings that were built of Hydrostone, which was just rock and cement. It was built by an architect, engineer in Dartmouth, Thomas Adams, but they're still standing, and they go for well over $600,000 now. So here we are, folks, stop number 8, and that is the Hydrostone Market. We'll make our way now. We'll circle around the market here. It's beautiful, and this is Fort Needham Park that's in the center there. So this is known as the Hydrostone Market, where people come and just kind of just relax and sit and take in the beauty and serenity of the surrounding area. It's quite lovely. So you'll be able to get an opportunity to hear, we'll pass in front of the various shops. There's a flower shop, props, really very high-end flower shop that in the city, and makes just beautiful, beautiful arrangements. And a pastry shop. The brewery that actually commissioned the building of the Blue Nose, the original Blue Nose. That's our signature ship here in Nova Scotia. You'll see on our 10-cent coin. So I just wanted to mention about the Halifax explosion. At the time of the explosion, Boston immediately loaded a train full of medical supplies and medical personnel, doctors, nurses, and some of them came and stayed for upwards of 3 months. So a lot of them were here during the Christmas, of course, because the explosion took place December 6th. So in recognition of that, every year since 1917, Halifax sends a tree to Boston, a beautiful tree that is meticulously picked out and sent to Boston to be erected in the Boston Common every year for Christmas in recognition of the tremendous help they gave to us in 1917.
Yes.
So we're making our way up here, and today is quite warm for Nova Scotia, and lately with global warming we've been getting some pretty hot temperatures near the end of July, first week of August.
Global warming,
because our temperature hovers around 18 degrees in the spring. Also, you see here that the self-service gasoline is $1.82 a liter. That would be equivalent to $7 a gallon Canadian, and of course $9 a gallon US. Very expensive to drive. A lot of people have parked their cars, and especially their big diesel trucks. They're not driving. So the Nova Scotia Liquor Commission, NSLC, this is where we sell our cannabis. Cannabis is legalized in Canada, as many of you know. So we're we'll take a right here onto Windsor Street. And as I said to you earlier, our Navy and military were very strongly steeped in both. This is our Army mess. Over to the left-hand side is the Army barracks and a lot of housing for the Army personnel and their families. On the right-hand side are the offices of various divisions of the Army. So we're making our way to our next stop, which is stop number 9, which is Fairview Lawn Cemetery, and the Titanic is near and dear to the hearts of Nova Scotians, of course. We have the most buried of anywhere in North America. There were more buried at sea, but as far as being buried on land, we have the most. We have 121 victims of the Titanic buried at the Fairview Lawn Cemetery. There's plenty of placards around there if you want to take a stroll through and read up on it. So the 121 victims were recovered by the Mackie Bennett. And then another 10 victims are buried in the Birch Cemetery, which is the Jewish cemetery. And another 19 are buried in the Roman Catholic Cemetery on Olivet Street, which we don't go by. It's about a mile from here. So it was April 12th, 1914 that it took place. It left Southampton on April 10th. It left Southampton, England, and on April 14th at 11:40 p.m. the Titanic hit an iceberg, and by 2:30 a.m. in the morning the Titanic sank. So of course it's been said that it was going at quite a speed and known as the unsinkable Titanic. There was over 30 millionaires on board at that time. So there was a lot of wealth on there. So only really those in the first class were able to get to the lifeboats, but there was only 30 lifeboats, and I mean there wasn't even near enough lifeboats for the amount of people on the ship. And since then, now all cruise ships and all ships have to have a number of lifeboats to accommodate all on the ship. So we're going to turn right down here. This is Chisholm Avenue. We will be going by some public housing on our way to the cemetery. So this is government subsidized housing as well. So as you go into the cemetery, it's a little walk up, not much, 5 minutes, and you'll notice that the White Star Line, who was the owner of the Titanic, commissioned the architect to build the cemetery, and it's done in the shape of the bow of a ship. So there's a number of tombstones there, and you'll see that each tombstone has a number on it, and that number actually, because it's all different numbers, just depicts what number that body was. These are running every 15 to 20 minutes, and this is stop number 10, the Fairview Lawn Cemetery.
A lot of people getting on the boat now.
The crew of the Mackie Bennett, who was sent to recover the bodies, the crew took the little boy into their care and had a church service for him here in Halifax at St. George's Church. It's about a mile from here. And they buried him, and they walked down from the church and buried him here at Fairview Lawn Cemetery. So for the longest time it was unknown who he was. They thought maybe he was a Paulson child. There was a lady by the name of Ann Paulson who was on the ship with her 5 children, and she was en route to Chicago to see her husband. And one of her children was around 2 years of age, and they felt that this little boy was 2 years of age as well. But anyway, in 2008, with DNA testing, they exhumed a number of bodies from the graveyard to see if they could positively identify some more folks. And the little boy, they had a couple of his teeth and a piece of his garment, but what really helped was that there was a police officer who was the grandson of a police officer that was there at the time of the Titanic sinking here in Halifax, and they were in charge of taking care of clothes and getting rid of some stuff, burning some clothes because they didn't want any looting taking place. Anyway, this individual kept these booties for a number of years, and then decided to take them to the Maritime Museum of the Atlantic, and they in turn sent those away for DNA testing and came back positively identifying the little boy as Sidney Leslie Goodwin. Funny story there is the grave of Jay Dawson, where you'll see many times that people put a number of paraphernalia out there thinking it's Jack Dawson. A lot of people felt it was the Jack Dawson who died on the Titanic, who played the role of Jack Dawson. But actually he was a coal trimmer, and he was in charge of trimming the coal and dispersing it to various areas of the ship. But to this day, people come and lay things at his gravesite. And another story was Michael Navratil was on board the ship, but he was under the name of Louis Hoffman. He and his wife had separated earlier in the year in January, and it was Easter Monday that he went and he took his kids and boarded the Titanic with the two children, but not under but they were under assumed names, Louis Hoffman and his two sons, Fred and James. So what happened was, when the ship was sinking, his father did take the two boys and put them in the life raft in the care of some folks on the life raft. So they became known as the Titanic Orphans when they did reach Halifax. And it took a month, but they advertised in the New York Times and a number of newspapers with their pictures looking for any family members. And sure enough, the mother of the two little boys did notice the two sons. Now their father was buried in the Jewish cemetery because he was under a Jewish name, although his name was Michael Navratil from France. He was under the name of Louis Hoffman, which is a Jewish name, and was buried there in the Jewish cemetery, which I spoke of. There's 10 people buried there. His son did come over, Michael Navratil did come over in 2000 and was asked if they wanted his dad's body removed and put into the other cemetery, but they opted to just let him rest in peace. So there's quite a number of stories, and certainly the Maritime Museum has a lot of history on the Titanic. If you're interested in more information on the Titanic, highly recommend taking in the Maritime Museum of the Atlantic.
Ne-am întors înapoi pe vas. Ia priviți ce lumină frumoasă. Ca în povește aici, în Halifax. Un oraș foarte frumos. Ne-a plăcut foarte mult. Am umblat mult pe jos. Am mers și cu autobuzul ăla de 2 bani. Good evening. Și acum mergem un pic pe terasa. Hello, sir. Hey, Mike, what's going on? Ce e fain că deja de 18 zile de când suntem aici, ne cunoaștem cu foarte multă lume. Lumea ne salută, noi pe ei. Și acum și aici e închis? But which bar is open on 9th? The pool bar. Okay, good. Da, ce se întâmplă este că în Canada, vasele de croazieră când ajung nu au voie să aibă decât un singur bar deschis pe etaj. Și deci aici suntem la etajul 9 și la etajul 9 singurul bar disponibil e barul de la piscina interioară. Așa că va trebui să mergem în partea aia. Și știi că în seara asta e și film, The Northman. Așa, și încă o chestie interesantă care am aflat-o despre Halifax este că este cel mai mare, ține un pic ăsta. Este cel mai mare, ține-te rog aici un pic. Deci nu este cel mai mare, este al doilea cel mai mare natural harbor port in the world după Sydney, Australia. Deci este un port natural, vedeți, pământ de fiecare parte și se formează golful ăsta cu apă adâncă care poate să găzduiască nave uriașe ca și a noastră. Și mai devreme era și Prințes. Și se pare că anul ăsta, deși suntem pe 1 august, mai așteaptă încă 100 de nave de croazieră aici în port. Vă dați seama, încă 100. Acolo în depărtare se apropie de noi. Ia să vedem ce este. Pleacă, nu se apropie, pleacă. Da. Da, și mai spunea ghidul că Halifax este fastest growing city in Canada. Și pe bună dreptate că am văzut foarte multe macarale. La cât de mititel e orașul, sunt foarte, foarte multe macarale. Deci merge economia și construcția aici.